Welcome everyone, Lele here, and thank you for being here in our IORGcast, right? This is an opportunity for Information Overload Research Group to share some information about what is the information overload as such, but also what are the various things that are around us that are causing overload, maybe inside us as well, right? And today I'm here and I'm going to show it. Marty Baris, that is, a board member and treasurer of IORG, right? But as a profession, is a associate professor of information system in the you are Marty in the Stewart School of Business, right? In IIT,
That's
and
correct.
and we were discussing already in one of the aircasts some time ago uh, about some part of the information overload and also what you do during your days. What are the hints and tips to avoid the overload? And today I would like instead to go, and the topic is notifications. Hmm? So notifications are very important for some, are a distraction some for others. It's an overload for almost everyone, I would say. Um, and I think that we've been seeing notification as something that it's coming more and more and it's growing, right? So let's today talk about what is notification, how they're impacting information overload, and how to avoid it, right? But let's start from the beginning. So Marty, um, what is your relationship with notifications first, right? And how your days and the work
Relationship
going.
is right here with my iPhone. And I get many notifications, and I've been really forced to manage them. Otherwise, I become overwhelmed with notifications. And some of you, depending upon the nature of notifications from businesses and how location services are turned on, you might be walking past a store, whether it's a food store or a clothing store, and you might get a notification, assuming that you've opted in, that says, hey, we've got a sale on French fries or a sale on socks. And that comes and alerts you, which could be very useful or it could be annoying. So, mostly we'll talk about a bit. We have some control over managing these notifications so that we're not overwhelmed. I mean, they could be, planned and but yet still highly distractive, limiting our attention, maybe decreasing our productivity at work and increasing our stress, which of course is not a good thing for our health. Uh, but these notifications can be important, and a matter of fact, they could be pleasurable, such as following entertainers on Twitter, and we get a rush of dopamine to our brain and say, oh, that's really great. Uh, so that's good. In a book, Information Diet by Clay Johnson, he notices that time is a non-renewable resource. So these notifications do consume some of our attention. And the question is that, useful allocation of our attention resources, or is it really reducing what we can do? So
Mhm.
there are many types of notifications that we could think of. Some are related to safety, such as in our home for fire, smoke, water, break-in alerts, especially now with digital mechanisms in our home. We can get notified who's at our front door and get an image of who's at the doorbell, matter of fact. Uh, or it could be a government message, alerts, whether it's related to weather, public safety, maybe an amber alert that someone is kidnapped. A
Mhm.
tornado is maybe 5 miles away. So we can't just rule notifications as a nuisance. Sometimes they can be very useful. Even with family and friends, we could have a setup where perhaps a relative's phone or a device that they wear on their body, if they fall down onto the ground, it might automatically trigger an alert notification that comes to our phone or PC, whatever it
Mhm.
may be. So that could be very helpful.
Or in the
Um,
past, I remember they had, this system of towers and they were putting a flame on every tower so that they knew if they weren't under attack, right? In the armies
Yes.
during the medieval time, right? That was a form of notification there, right? You see a fire there, then there is an army attacking, and we should get ready, right? There is an emergency. But from another thing I'm noticing is true. These are all notifications. So we perhaps don't connect the doorbell to notification, or we don't connect, somebody, just the alarm or a klaxon but these are all things that are notifying us about an emergency and something. And I noticed that, nowadays, for example, even to knock or to ring the bell of the house, many people usually tendentially want to send a message like, I'm outside, right? Or you just ring the phone. So it's more like the phone is like the door now, and instead of the real door. And when somebody rings at your bell, it's so unprepared. It's so like some unexpected thing that perhaps is even more annoying than the real kind of like normal phone or message notification, right? So I don't know what you have to what you think about it, or if you notice any change in the recent time, right?
Well, I know in a meeting, I may get a notification, and if I've forgotten to turn my phone from audio to vibrate, or if I'm in the theater, sometimes I will put that on vibrate rather than turning the phone off. And that can be very disconcerting if I'm uh, watching an opera or a movie, and all of a sudden I feel on my chest that vibration and saying, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to turn my phone off.
Mm.
Uh, so we have to be careful, depending upon the situations that we're in, that we manage or handle the notifications appropriately. But we're in a 24/7 all connected world, and we have this fear of missing out on possible events that are of interest to us. So we tend to leave our phones on. And although we'll talk about solutions in a moment, uh, really turn off all my app notifications except maybe half a dozen, so that I'm not interrupted
Mm.
with the surprise elements lately that you just mentioned. But then again, we might use the phone very importantly to remind us to perform a task,
Yeah.
whether it's at work to start a meeting, or personally to go to a doctor's appointment or pick up a rental car. Uh, so the notifications are really like a double-edged sword. On one case, they can be interrupting and annoying, and in another case, they can be very helpful in just guiding our daily lives. These notifications, because we have so many digital devices, whether they're the smartphone that we have, or
Mm-hmm.
the PC, a tablet, or if you have a smart watch, you can get notifications coming at you from all directions in that sense, which can be surprising at times. And these,
So,
sure.
so at this point, so we can get them all directions. Sometimes it's true, like you're there in the theater, you have the perfect music and moments, you have the apex of pleasure, and something is vibrating, and you just miss it, right? You just miss that thing. But I notice as well that when you have conversation, right, when we are talking, if now we are having recording this podcast and I get my phone vibrating, I might miss what I'm saying. Like, okay, what I was, so it's a distraction, right? So how do you see the overload that is caused by notification? What can be the various causes and problem related to information overload that the notification are creating?
Yes, well, the notifications we say could be helpful in guiding tasks to be done, but that is something that we have control over. And I think we don't necessarily realize that we do still have the ability, whether it's our smartphone device, whatever the device is, that we can manage the frequency and the type of the notifications that come to us. I mean, we just assume that these push notifications just automatically come from some unknown source, but yet we have applications, whether again it's on our smartphones or our tablets, where we can identify, yes, notifications are allowed, and what form do they come in, by the vibration or the tone, and we could choose different tones so that if we hear one tone, we know that, that's a family notification, that's a work notification, and whether to allow that momentary interruption to continue to persist, or whether we just disregard it. So I think much of this is really under our control if we would just take a few moments and think about, how do we want to manage this, or do we just allow everything to penetrate and disrupt? And we know that when we're disrupted or distracted, it takes some time to get back to the task that we're on, which can be dysfunctional or reduce our productivity. I mean, these alert links could be, as we say, one-off, just very quick, or say on the alarm on our smartphone, we have a choice of having a single alarm, or we could have snooze, so that it keeps coming back to us every 5 minutes.
Is it productivity the only thing that has a consequence of it, or there are more consequences?
Well, in addition to the productivity, if we get stressed out, that is going to reduce our ability to focus and concentrate on our work, which ultimately, yes, comes back to productivity. But stress and anxiety is something which is not good for our health. It could increase our blood pressure. We might end up having to go to a doctor and get blood pressure medication. So that is a real concern, and not only for us personally, but I think in many of the work settings, our employers are concerned about that, and they want to help with notification. Or when we're working in a team group, do we want to manage the notifications from our teams? Which ones are more urgent, or which ones are ordinary? Can we filter that so that we do have some, we won't say quiet time, but really task time that we can concentrate on finishing a project for maybe 30 minutes, turn off our notifications completely, or maybe 95% of them, and then allows a certain urgent or emergency notifications to filter through to us. But this is really a difficult situation, because we want to be connected. We want to be notified of what events are happening. It's satisfying to us, but yet, again, it can be disruptive to our work. So that becomes a bit of a problem.
So you were talking already about the solutions, right? And I like I saw once in a video, I think it was Simon Sinek was saying it, like, if I go for a beer or just a conversation out with a friend, I just don't bring the phone, right? It's not even switching it off, but just don't bring it is already like neutralizing all the possible, distraction you might get, right? I read another book. It's from Cheryl Tarkle. It's called. I actually mentioned in a couple of live streaming with the IORG. It was called Reinventing Conversation. But one of the most interesting research that was shared was with the phone off on the table, right? So they observed that even if the phone was off on the table, the conversation went less deeply into the topic, where like more staying on the surface, just because the presence of a device that could bring a distraction is enough to somehow have put your hands in front of it, like to say, like, I'm not gonna talk more, I'm not gonna dedicate enough time to it, because I might get distracted, so it's pointless to get more into it, right? And this is perhaps something something that we don't realize. It's something like unconscious as behavior, right? It's not that phone is off, but maybe there are a lot of unconscious things that happen with us, and that the notification are impacting it, and that is totally not good for for connecting, for working.
Well, I would agree. And just having the phone in an off position on the table, if we're so addicted, seriously, to the phone, that's a reminder. Or if the phone is not on the table, then we may feel, oh, I have to reach into my purse or my coat pocket and pull it out every X minutes and just check to see if there's anything that I'm missing out on. But this has really become a very intrusive part of our lives. And there's been, as you say, much research of people that are trying to remove themselves, or individuals that have gone into a cabin in the mountains and not taken any communication device for maybe 2 days or a week, just trying to, in a sense, like people will go to a spa and try and, perhaps improve their health and eating habits, lose weight. Well, part of the information diet is to perhaps stop the notifications for a period of time and just enjoy our friends and family without having any possible intrusion, which is very difficult when we're so programmed to being able to expect and look at notifications. So it's really become part of our lifestyle, for better or worse. But we might even, think of having multiple devices. We might have a smartphone which is for our business, and another smartphone that's for our social activities. And we use the one that is most appropriate. Now, that's a rather extreme solution, because then we have to incur the cost of multiple devices. So that's not necessarily one that we want to encourage. Uh, but we can, as you say, just turn off our phone and maybe just hide it. Uh,
The
or
airplane mode is always there, right?
yes, yeah. Uh,
But airplane mode doesn't consider the notification that perhaps we put that are offline, right? Alarms and some stuff of the kind. There are some applications that they do it. Not, if you're playing games, right? For
yeah,
example, there are some games that when something is created. I don't know if you, I remember there are these games that, when you are creating like a house, and when the house, it takes 3 hours to complete the house, so you just switch off the application, you do your stuff, and at the point when the house is completed, bling, you get a notification also from the game. Your house is ready, you can go back playing, right? And I mean, this is still a serious thing, because that notification might have distracted you from anything that was much more worthy than virtual house to be created, right?
yes. Well, task switching, we know that multitasking is not necessarily a
Yeah,
good thing, and the notifications can force us into that mode. No question about that. Um, but I try and use do not disturb on my phone for contacts or different apps. And the nice thing about it, at least on the iPhone, I can't address the Android operating system, is that the do not disturb is something that, number one, I can control, and secondly, the individual or maybe the bot that's trying to reach me is unaware that the do not disturb is on. So it's less threatening, if you will, from the sender's point of view, but it gives us peace of mind and some isolation if we indeed need that. Or we could do things like try and combine all these notifications, the ones that are non-emergency, just as we can combine news events or messages and batch them and allow them to be available at a later point in time, either during
yeah.
our work or maybe at home.
So actually, this is what I wanted to ask you, right? Which one is the best of the solution, right? So is it us to learn to switch off our phone, to go on the device and just organize it in a way that it doesn't bother us, or we rely more on developers and on those applications to improve it for us at one point, so that maybe if the notification are with AI deciding it for us, or if we have a better kind of notification portal that is managing it, then we will find a solution. So what's your take?
Well, I personally think that my own ability to go into the notifications and set that as something which is on or off, or set the type of messaging through media, whether it's going to be an audio or a vibrating type notification or signal, is something which is sufficient for me. Of course, I make the choices just to limit the number of people that I follow on social media, but some people thrive on that. They need to know this, and if they're talking to a friend and if they're not up to date on some post from a particular personality, they're going to
Hmm.
feel like that they appear uninformed to their friends. So it's just a question of how we want to, in a sense, form our own personas that are viewed by others in that context. But I think the individual ability to manage the notifications is the important thing. And as you suggested, really developers have an obligation to make those choices available as mechanisms for us, because if we're just in a uncontrolled push notification mode, that is very dysfunctional and could be reducing our productivity or the types of conversations that we're having socially in that sense. I mean, I like your idea of using AI. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, we might think about, maybe intelligent location services that will know that here I am driving my car, or I'm in the theater. It knows where I am and saying, oh, we better turn off this notification for Marty because he's involved in something which he really has to focus in on. Or
Hmm.
with facial recognition, if a notification comes through and I hear it and my face goes like that, or happy, then maybe the notification will come through or it'll be put away.
Yeah.
Although that can really be, an infringement, especially with the GDPR privacy rules. I don't know if we want to go that route.
Yeah. Perhaps it's gonna give you uh, eventually less freedom, maybe, like to really choose. Because it's like if you are don't ha- if you're having a blackout, right? It's like then you are not able to. You cannot watch the TV anymore. You cannot cook anything because maybe we just have an induction thing. You can The fridge is not working. So there is a lot of things you cannot, not even communicating or working because the computer and everything, we don't have enough batteries. So it becomes the same, right? The moment when the system is so much of a extended phenotype of our own being, it becomes too much. So it's rather better to have a kind of self learning for ourselves, at least for the moment, until they will put some chips in our brain, and so that we will have a direct connection with those devices. Yeah, but let's talk actually in this case about the various solutions, right? So if we can name, we name some of them, but in kind of more structural way, what would be the first best solution, and what are maybe the others?
Yeah, so I think, again, the ability to go into the specific notification list in our smart device, whether it's a watch or a smartphone, and be able to turn off or turn on the notification is really the first way in which we can manage this intelligently. Uh, and we could also, depending upon the type of device that we have, we might be able to indicate that a notification could be concerned or typed as high priority or ordinary, and then allow just the high priority notifications to come about. Uh, and we can set timelines so that notifications can be accepted or can be postponed or rejected. I think that's important if we want to set aside some focus time, whether that's doing a project at work or having a conversation with a dear friend or family member. Uh, and we might be able to choose, when we want to allow these social media notifications to come about just in the normal course of the day, as well as when we sign on to a Facebook or Instagram. We have the ability to allow the notifications that may have gone into a queue to just pop at us and really surprise us and overwhelm us, or are those notifications just going to be an icon that we can click on as we wish? Again, the key question is the control is available for us, but do we take advantage of that, or do we let the applications, the devices, control our lives? Sort of like opting in or opting out. We can do it if we want to think about that carefully. But I think part of the difficulty is that we don't have enough instruction or education to inform us what can be done.
So now, one thing to think about, right, is like you're a professor, and so you deal also with students, and in this case, I wonder how much of education, our students, particularly maybe in university, get about how to deal with this particular situation, like the awareness of the decrease of productivity, the awareness of the decrease of attention, the stress related to it, and so on, of a simple notification that we get through our phone, right? Do they get any training? Do they know, or is there some professor talking about it? What?
Well, I think unless you're taking a course in perhaps management that focuses on individual in addition to group and organizational aspects, you're probably not going to get this information. For our international students that come to the United States, we have a few courses that kind of acclimate them to the ways and the cultures of what is done, say, in the United States. And that would be an opportunity, not to say it would be specific to the United States culture, but just thinking about the etiquette within the classroom, because we actually have in our business school one of the rules that says that when you come into the classroom, you're supposed to turn off your cell phone. Now, when I see students working with their cell phones, either overtly or they're trying to hide it under their desk, I will walk over to them and I'll say, please, turn off your cell phone or put it on vibrate, but just take it away from your work area. And if this happens again, I'm going to have to take your cell phone away and give it back to you at the end of class. Some faculty that really take a more extreme approach, and they say, well, when you come into the classroom, you have to deposit your cell phone here in this basket at the beginning of class, and at the end, you can pick it up.
Wouldn't it be more kind of, let's say, challenging, but equally a learning opportunity to say, you just consider that your phones are a very big source of distraction, but you are here to spend time learning, right? So instead of taking out your phone, be aware about the power of notification and try to be strong. The strongest will be the best learners and the best students eventually. So your distraction is in front of you. You know how to deal with it. So now, good luck, right? And maybe I can help you when I notice that you are distracted. I can tell you, I see you are distracted, right? So that someone might just realize this little point and take.
Well, that would be a very polite and constructive approach. I think one of the aspects in terms of our personality is how disciplined are we? Because if we hear that notification, can we just disregard it, or do we, grab the device and pay attention to it? But even if the cell phones can be taken care of in the classroom setting, still we have the laptops or a desktop that could be used for, in doing an exercise or actually looking at something at the internet, which is useful for the particular topic. Notifications, once you're signed on as an individual, may occur also in addition to your cell phone. So it's very challenging because these notifications can come to us through different channels. and it requires just some discipline to decide how and when we're going to filter these.
Mhm.
But you're correct. This really should be part of the way in which we educate people, because the smartphone devices or the iPads are used by children 3, 4, 5 years old and going up. And can we start to help them, deal with these devices in a very positive way, as you suggest, or do the children learn to just accept all these notifications and say, well, that's the way I should behave for the rest of my life? So that is an important point that really needs to be addressed on a proactive basis. Yes.
And if the phone is a door, right, and it might not be the only device coming in. So, and the more we are able to deal with data, the more we will use this data, right? So already now you have the examples with I think Amazon with these supermarkets that already when you don't even need to pay, right? You just leave the supermarket and immediately you get a notification that you paid, right? So already
Yeah.
knows the location when you enter, when you are, wherever, whatever you move, how you move. Now the face is recognized. So there are so many information that we can get from devices. So that means that the notification are not going away. There's going to be more and more and more. And if we don't know how to deal with them, we perhaps have, I don't know, I think it's stress is one of the issues.
Sure.
And kind of maybe the feeling is there a kind of a feeling of missing out as well included with that? But if
Oh,
you
I
don't
think
check,
so.
you miss stuff, right? This kind of anxiety all the time.
Absolutely. So are you suggesting that we should all carry around a stress squeegee ball so that when we
Yeah.
get high anxiety, uh-oh, time to squeeze that, rather than press the panic button?
Yeah, it's true. It's the connected with dopamine as well. The fact that you want to open your phone more times, right? And if you don't open it, you have this kind of temptation to do it. And so that's actually still the same problem. So one thing I noticed, right, in my phone, I switched off all the notifications. So except for if somebody calls me, right? But then at one point, I I noticed that I was also like opening the phone to check if there was that particular notification there, right? So then there was just a little number. So I removed also the number. And now I noticed that I don't check anymore. I don't know, Facebook or LinkedIn. So before, when there were the notification, I kept spending seconds every few minutes, right? So like at the end is hours maybe in a day, just checking pointless things that didn't really have so much of a interest. It was okay. It's a majority of things I was just skipping, and without notification, I'm not caring about anything, right? So it's just once a day I go there and see what is happening, right? Somebody tells me, you know what, who posted what? Okay, let me check, right? But otherwise, it's something like that. It lost any interest that particular tool, right? Except for when I really need it. And perhaps that could be a transformation that notification somehow makes things more useful than they really are. Or I don't know.
Well, I would agree. And especially just say if you're in a conversation and if you're not checking your phone and the other person is checking her or his phone, then the person might say, well, I wonder why I am not checking my phone. Am I less informed as a citizen or an individual? So there's some sort of a social, effect on trying to
Yeah,
project an image so that I'm just as socially aware as others in that context. But I think you're right, it becomes a learned behavior, but anything that's learned can be unlearned if we have the right approach. So that maybe in schools and at work, we should have specific sessions that help us manage our devices more effectively, both related to productivity and our mental health, because it really can become a mental health issue, as we know.
Yes, yes. And so maybe just in conclusion, so um, what would be the best how to call notification management from your side? Just somebody, of course, that we also know that attention as such is something quite limited, right, for people, right? So you might have listened to us through until here. So what you take out from this, maybe to summarize and to bring out what are the three things that they should take from our conversation, and so any advice from your side?
Yes, well, I think the first thing is just awareness, to be aware that notifications, although can be very helpful in guiding our lives, but can be very disruptive, and just acknowledge that these notifications are distractions rather than sources of FOMO in that context. And then secondly, that we do have the ability to manage these notifications in terms of the types, the frequency, but it's going to take some overt action with our smart device to be able to set up notifications when they're going to happen. And this is something which typically many individuals will just accept their device on a default basis, where the notification default is usually on. So we just assume they're on and not really aware that we can go in proactively and change the notification settings, turn them off. So I think this is something that we just need to give some attention to, rather than saying, well, I have my device and I accept it as it is. And sort of, there was a book as a child, I remember there was a monkey that was eating spaghetti and just eating more and more and more until the monkey got sick. Now, I don't know if any of us really get to that notification overload that we mentally, just are overwhelmed, but we should not even get to that point. We should think carefully about the notifications that are set in our devices, the ones that we have control over, and not allow these surprise push notifications to intercept into our daily lives. So the idea is, the notifications are there, as you say, there's many of them, but it's really up to us to take control as to what notifications occur under what circumstances, and to use them as a benefit to help us guide through our daily lives rather than distract us.
If we are talking to someone and we are just feel the urge to check a notification, right, on the phone or somewhere, if we're working and maybe having a video call, and at the same time, checking the mails or the chat. If we, at the same time, I don't know, do something that, it connects with people, and we find out that instead we, at the same time, do something else, that we're already eating too much of spaghetti, right? We are already kind of sick in that time, and that's a symptom. There might be a situation where you feel your time. I don't know, you have a walk, and while you're walking, you want to check something. That's okay, right? It's like if you select some days and some times during your days, and you do it mindfully, right? And then it works. But in the moment when you find out that you didn't want to check that thing, but you still checked it, then that's when a change should happen, right?
Yes, it's a challenging world. We're all digitally connected. We want to have as many connections as we can, for fear of missing out on something interesting to talk to our friends, or personally very comforting. But we have to remember that time is limited, and we need to manage it to our best use.
Oh, yeah. So thank you. I would say that's a very good way to close our conversation, right? Is there anything we should share that we didn't say about Marty?
No, I'll just comment that I made sure that all my notifications were turned off for this webinar, so I would not be interrupted. But you have to have the discipline, the willpower to say, this is my time, and I just want to focus on something that I'm doing, or perhaps with a set of 3 or 4 colleagues. And that takes some overt action on our part.
Yeah, and awareness. We should, like, the end of the conversation is awareness. If we are aware, that's important. Like, if just you know what is the cause, you know how is it, you know how much distracted you are, so you can choose what to do. You can have a conscious choice. Should I do check or not check? And that is already something is gonna be very much changing. Thank you so much for sharing. So I wish that, with a much more, aware, management of our notification, there will be much less overload for our life, and perhaps we will also pay much more attention to when we notify the others, right? Because that's also the second part of the piece. We might send messages or things or at a time that is not appropriate, and this also is causing notifications, right, to others, and that's well, of course that I am free to send anything, but you would never go and ring a bell of a person at midnight if you're not expected, right? So in the same way, perhaps there are we could apply the same logic also to our communication.
Yes.
Thank you, Marty, and you can comment and like and share this video and let us know what you think about it. And yeah, that concludes our IORGcast, and
Okay.
see you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.